This committee is tasked with an important responsibility to review and study on a continuing basis the operation of government activities at all levels with a view to determine their economy and efficiency. At this point in our country's history, this task is of the utmost importance. At the end of last year, the national debt exceeded $18 trillion. We have to ensure that every tax dollar is spent responsibly. We also have to ensure that our government is running in an effective and efficient manner. The American people are entitled to know and understand how their government is working. And these shouldn't necessarily be partisan issues. It is my hope that Mr. Cummings and I can work together to uncover ways to improve the way our government operates so we are maximizing every tax dollar that is spent. And I hope we do continue to find opportunities on both sides of the aisle to work and find ways to improve this great government. We have wonderful federal employees who work hard. They're diligent, they're patriotic. But from time to time, there are problems and challenges. We need to address those. In the United States of America, we're different because we do look at the country, we do look at our government in a self-critical eye with the goal and the desire to improve it. We have men and women who serve overseas in a variety of capacities, whether it be our U.S. military, the State Department, or other types of activities. We have a duty and obligation to make sure that they too are served well. I'm hopeful that we can work together more than we can work independently. I've let Mr. Cummings know that I do not plan to operate in a way that would exclude the minority. Where possible, I've tried to accommodate Mr. Cummings' requests, and I intend to look forward to opportunities to do the same in the future. One of Mr. Cummings' concerns, as I've heard it, involved the minority's access to committee documents. The House rule states each member, including the ranking member, will have access to the committee documents, and I certainly plan to honor that. It is crystal clear in the House rules. Hopefully, this access to documents will produce open and robust discussions regarding the committee's oversight and investigative work. We've also included language that I will be offering today that the ranking member indicated was important to him with regard to minority subcommittee assignments and coverage of committee meetings and field hearings. He made a good point, and I agree. Over the next 2 years, I hope we can continue to sit down, just like we did last night and have many times in the past, to discuss concerns and find a solution that works for both of us. I would also invite members on both sides of the aisle to please come chat with me, chat with the staff. We're here to serve the American people, and it's best done in an open and collaborative communication. It is important, however, for the chairman, I want to highlight this, it is important, however, that the chairman retain the ability to issue a subpoena when necessary. The authority of the chairman to authorize and issue subpoenas is a longstanding practice of the committee. Given the work of the committee, it is important for the chairman to have the authority to issue a subpoena when necessary. Ideally, the administration and others would be forthcoming and transparent in response to our requests, and therefore we wouldn't need a subpoena. But in cases when it isn't, a subpoena may be needed. I have strong respect for subpoena power delegated to me as the chairman, and it is not my intent to send unnecessary or unjustified subpoenas. To that end, I plan to give Mr. Cummings a reasonable amount of notice regarding a subpoena and consult with him before subpoenas are sent. I understand some members of the committee, this isn't necessarily enough for them. Going forward, I hope my actions will hopefully change your mind and you will understand my true intent and purpose here. Generally speaking, I know that Mr. Cummings and his staff have requested we give more notice to the minority on all committee activities, and thus far we have. Actions often speak louder than words, and I think we've demonstrated our willingness and desire that we'll continue to work with the minority. We certainly plan to keep you and your staff informed as much and as early as possible. I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Cummings, people on both sides of the aisle, to understand how our government is working as well as ways that we can make it better. With that, I'd now like to recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to join the chairman in welcoming all of the returning members and the new members joining our committee for the first time. It is an honor to have you here, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Today is the first meeting of the Oversight Committee in the 114th Congress. It is also an opportunity for a new beginning. The last 4 years were filled with acrimony, partisanship, and sometimes vulgar displays. They were a stain on this committee's integrity and an embarrassment to the House of Representatives. It is my sincere hope that we can leave this tainted legacy behind and work together in a collaborative manner to address the serious challenges our nation faces. Chairman Chaffetz and I have had many productive conversations both before and after he became chairman. I want to thank him for visiting my district in Baltimore to see firsthand some of the issues faced by people in my district, and I want to thank him for inviting me to visit Utah. I learned a lot and gained a new appreciation for the issues that confront his constituents. The chairman has stated publicly that he wants to run the committee differently than his predecessor, and both Democrats and Republicans welcome this news. The chairman has promised a more open and cooperative relationship, and I understand our staffs have already held several joint meetings both on and off the Hill, and I want to thank both staffs, and I really mean that, for all you've been doing to work with us. And I hope and I'm sure that this will continue. I believe the chairman and I are off to a good start, and I thank him for the courtesies he and his staff have already shown. That is why I'm disappointed that Democrats will not be able to support the rules package today. There's nothing personal about our position. The simple fact of the matter is that the rules proposed by the chairman are worse than the rules we had under Chairman Issa. For example, the new rules would eliminate the requirement that the ranking member must concur with requests for extended questioning of witnesses, a right that every ranking member of this committee has had since this rule was first put in place 20 years ago. More troubling is the proposal for issuing subpoenas. The Oversight Committee has always had unilateral subpoena authority under our rules, but historically our chairs have declined to exercise that power. Instead, they obtain the ranking member's concurrence or they put it to a vote. They recognize that the coercive power of subpoenas should be used only as a last resort after careful deliberation, and it should not be used by a single individual without the backing of either the ranking member or the committee. The only exception to this historical practice had been former Chairman Dan Burton, who issued more than 1,000 subpoenas unilaterally that were widely criticized as abusive, including several subpoenas issued to the wrong people. When Republican Tom Davis became chairman, he corrected these abuses. He returned to the historical practice of obtaining the ranking member's concurrence or a committee vote. And when Democrat Henry Waxman became chairman, he continued this practice as well. Unfortunately, when Chairman Issa took over, he decided to return to the Burton-era practice of issuing unilateral subpoenas. He promised to consult with Democrats, but he often did not. He also promised to hold votes on controversial subpoenas, but he never held a single vote during his entire 4-year tenure as chairman. He issued more than 100 unilateral subpoenas with no debate, no votes, including several that were unwarranted, abusive, and probably would have been rejected had they been voted on by the committee. For example, on May 2nd, 2014, the same day Speaker Boehner announced that he was taking the Benghazi investigation away from the Oversight Committee, Chairman Issa issued a unilateral subpoena to compel Secretary of State Kerry to testify. Chairman Issa had never even written or called to request the Secretary's testimony, and he later withdrew the subpoena. On June 24 of 2014, Chairman Issa issued a unilateral subpoena to IRS Commissioner John Cushman after Ways and Means Committee Chairman Dave Camp announced that he would hold the first hearing on Lois Lerner's computer crash. Commissioner Cushman made clear that he would have testified without a subpoena, as he had done multiple times previously. After Chairman Issa, there should have been a correction, just like there was one after Chairman Burton. But amazingly, the House Republican leaders have doubled down on Chairman Issa's abusive approach. Apparently, Speaker Boehner decided to export the ISA model to other committees and give other chairmen the same power to issue subpoenas unilaterally. Let me be clear as I close. This is not about the authority to issue subpoenas. Republicans on these committees already have that authority, and they also have the numbers to win any vote. This is about the Republicans not wanting a public debate about what they are doing. It's about Republicans eliminating transparency. This is a mistake. The House of Representatives is a deliberative body. We each represent more than 700,000 Americans, and the most powerful authority Congress possesses should not be used without debate. So at the appropriate time, Democrats will offer an amendment to return the committee's historical practice adopted by every previous chairman of this committee except two, Dan Burton and Joe Issa. Although we cannot agree to the rules package, the chairman and I have agreed to other changes that I believe will help the committee operate more effectively and efficiently. When we move to the debate portion of today's meeting, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to engaging in a colloquy with you about those policies. With that, I yield back.
I thank you. I will hold the record open for 5 legislative days for any member who would like to submit a written statement. But at this point, I think it would be appropriate if I were to introduce the new members of this committee to the Republican side, and then if you can introduce the new Democratic members, I think that would be appropriate. I'd like to welcome Mick Mulvaney from South Carolina to join this committee. He's previously served in Congress. He was elected in 2010. He's a former member of the South Carolina legislature and a father of some twins that keep him busy with triplets. Pardon me. I hate to take anything away from him. Triplets, my bad. Ken Buck from Colorado graduated from Princeton. He played 4 years of football there as a defensive back, punter, and probably most importantly, impressively, as a place kicker. Earned all Ivy League honors in his senior year. Got his law degree from the University of Wyoming. Has a son who's a graduate of West Point. We thank him for his service and your service as well, and welcome you to the committee, Mr. Buck of Colorado. Mark Walker from North Carolina graduated from Piedmont International University with a BA in Biblical Studies. Is a pastor most recently at Lawndale Baptist Church in Greensboro. His wife Kelly is a flight trauma nurse for Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center's Air Care program. We appreciate her service and great work that she does as one of the first responders out there. Mr. Blum from Iowa received his MBA from the University of Dubuque, a former CEO of Eagle Point Software, owner of Digital Canal, a software company. He was named the Iowa Entrepreneur of the Year in the high-tech category and was also a high school basketball coach, and we appreciate you joining us in this committee as well, so thank you and welcome. Mr. Heiss of Georgia earned his BA from Asbury College, Master of Divinity degree from Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Luther Rice Seminary. Represents the people of the 10th District in Georgia, and we welcome you as well, so thank you for being here. Mr. Russell is a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. And during Operation Iraqi Freedom, he commanded the 1st Battalion's 22nd Infantry Regulars and conducted combat in Tikrit, Iraq. We thank you for your dedicated service, your commitment to this country, and the good hard work that you have done in the United States military, and honor you for your service, and we're honored to have you as part of this committee as well. He was also an Oklahoma State Senator and was very integral and very involved. You should all hear his story about his involvement in the hunt and the capture of Saddam Hussein. Earl Buddy Carter from Georgia's 1st District is a former member of the Georgia State Legislature. He's associate degree from Young Harris College and a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy from the University of Georgia. We welcome him to this committee and appreciate his tenacity on the issues, and I know he'll provide some lively debate and trying to get to the truth of matters, and we're welcome Mr. Carter from Georgia in this committee. Mr. Glenn Grothman from Wisconsin is a former member of the Wisconsin State Legislature. He received his law degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School. We welcome him to the committee and thank you for your service as well. Mr. Will Hurd graduated from Texas A&M with a degree in computer science. He was also the student body president of a rather large school and That's quite a feat. He worked for the CIA for 9 years, including a tour of duty as an operations officer in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. He is the new chairman of the IT subcommittee. We appreciate him taking on this assignment and look forward to his participation. And we thank you for your service in the name of our country as well. Mr. Gary Palmer earned a bachelor's degree in operations management from the University of Alabama. He's chief development officer of the Alabama Policy Institute, a conservative think tank, and very active on the issues, and will provide a great deal to this committee, and we're glad that Mr. Palmer from Alabama is here as well. And we welcome these new members and the members that are returning to our committee, and appreciate your service. With that, I'll allow Mr. Cummings to introduce the new members on the Democratic side of the aisle.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We certainly welcome all of the members on the Republican side, and we're very pleased to welcome on the Democratic side, Representative Brenda Lawrence, the former longtime mayor of Southfield, Michigan, who represents that state's 14th district. Representative Ted Lieu, a former state assemblyman and senator who represents the 33rd District of California. Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, who represents the 12th District of New Jersey and was a longtime state legislator. Representative Stacey Plaskett, who represents the Virgin Islands and has had a distinguished career as an attorney and community leader. And Representative Mark DeSaulnier, who represents California's 11th District and served as a former state senator and assemblyman. And Representative Brendan Boyle, a former state assemblyman who represents the 13th District of Pennsylvania. We welcome all of you. We anxiously look forward to working with you. This committee takes on some major issues. As I tell my staff all the time, we are blessed to be where we are at this moment. And so I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Particularly for the new members, I think it's important. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was here as a freshman, I remember saying to John Boehner, I don't know what I don't know, so tell me what I need to know. And the first thing he said to me, which has probably been one of the most true things I heard, he said, you can disagree, just don't be disagreeable. And I think it's important as we do tackle tough, contentious issues where there is vivid debate and lively discussion that it not become too personal. And it's just my own personal hope and desire. Again, we're going to disagree. The way our founders set up the Constitution, there's supposed to be debate. There's supposed to be lively discussion. But how we do it matters, and it matters to the people, it matters to the people we serve, it matters to the body and the integrity of this committee and to this institution. We have been told that votes have now been pushed to about 3:15, so we will continue and press on. We thought we were going to go to votes at this point, but we will continue on, and for the photographer, if you can bear with us here, we would certainly appreciate it. The committee will now consider a resolution adopting the rules of the committee. Without objection, the resolution adopting the rules of the committee will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. The resolution has been distributed and should be in each of your folders. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, U.S. House of Representatives, 114th Congress.
Thank you. Members at any time may move to strike the last word and be recognized for comment regarding the rules package. I happen to have an amendment, and I think some other members have amendments as well. It's okay with Mr. Cummings here. I think what I'd like to do first is to issue my amendment, which should be non-controversial, something we've agreed to with Mr. Cummings. And so I'm going to go ahead and offer this first amendment, and then again, if any members wish to offer an amendment or to move to strike the word and speak on the rules package, so be it. We'll recognize you in the proper order. I have an amendment at the desk. If the clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment to Rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, offered by Mr. Chavitz of Utah.
This amendment, I have an amendment to the rules. In Clause C of Rule 11, regarding audio and visual coverage of committee proceedings, I'd like to insert, quote, with the concurrence of the ranking member, end quote, into the rule. The amendment is in people's folders. We have talked to Mr. Cummings and his staff. I really have no other comment about this. Don't want to take the committee's unnecessary time, except audio-visual coverage of committee proceedings to be done mutually. I agree with their recommendation. I'm offering this amendment and encourage members to adopt it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you, and I want to clarify that this amendment simply restores language that is always in our committee rules. I don't know if it was removed by mistake or due to an oversight, but this amendment simply puts concurrence back into the broadcast rule as it was in the last Congress and as it should be, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this amendment? Hearing no other the comments, without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any other amendments, or does any member wish to strike the last word and comment on the rules package?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for recognizing me. If I may, I would like to engage in a quick colloquy with you on a couple of items.
Yes.
First, I would like to confirm the text of the rule on extended questioning of witnesses so there is no misunderstanding later. According to the new rule, the chairman may permit up to 30 minutes of extended witness questioning at a hearing. He does not have to, but he can. And it does not have to be 30 minutes. It can be less. It can be allocated to one member, several members, or designated staff. And the ranking member may do the same on his side. Is that accurate, Mr. Chairman?
It is my understanding that both sides would have equal time. It is also my intention to do this at the end of a hearing and not before each member has had an opportunity to question the witness.
Second, I know a lot of members on our side and yours are concerned about not losing their seniority based on the way the rules are now written. This extended questioning provision may be exercised only after all committee members have had an opportunity to ask questions under the 5-minute rule. So, Mr. Chairman, this provision cannot be used before committee members have the opportunity to use their 5 minutes of questioning. Is that right?
Again, it is my intention to recognize or to invoke this and use this in rare circumstances, and that it would be done at the conclusion or after each member has had an opportunity to question the witness.
Finally, you have removed language from the previous rules requiring the ranking member to concur with requests for extended questioning. Despite this change, I would like to get your assurance that you will still consult with me before granting extended questioning before the hearing begins. It's my hope that we can work this out collaboratively, as chairman and ranking members have done since the rule was first enacted almost 20 years ago. Will you agree to that?
It is my intention to consult with the ranking member. I would also point out that a committee vote can be called in this instance so that the will of the body can be called into a vote, and a vote can be taken, but I will do so in concurrence or I'm sorry, not in concurrence, in consultation with the ranking member. That is the intention.
Thank you very much.
Does any other member have a move to strike the last word or have an amendment on the rules package? Gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I very much appreciate the tone with which you began the first organizational meeting of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. I honestly think a lot of damage was done to the institution and to this committee in the last 4 years. Restoring civility and respect for each other, I think, is an absolute essential in our doing our work. You're right, we're going to disagree, but we need to do so with respect and trying to operate as much with the golden rule as possible, if not for moral reasons, then for understanding you too may be in the minority soon. Who knows? Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment to the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I know... sorry.
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley, is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment. Without objection, the amendment is considered as read.
I thank the chair. This is a fairly straightforward amendment, Mr. Chairman, that it says that requires the concurrence of the ranking member or a majority vote of the committee with respect to the issuance of subpoenas. And why are we doing that? Subpoenas have been abused historically in this committee, and at other times we have a different tradition. And I want to invoke the better angels of our nature when it comes to the issuance of subpoenas. And I want to cite the example of Representative Tom Davis, my predecessor in this job, and your predecessor in your job. He was chairman and ranking member of this committee, and he represented the 11th District, Virginia, as I am privileged to do now, and Henry Waxman, who was also ranking member to Tom Davis and chairman when Tom stepped down and became ranking member. Remember that golden rule. During the committee's organizational meeting in 2007, as Tom Davis was becoming the ranking member because the Republicans had lost the majority, and Henry Waxman was stepping up from ranking member to chairman, my predecessor, Tom Davis, Republican of Virginia, said, "The rules package delegates the authority of the chairman to issue subpoenas. I also had that authority, but I think I always consulted with you regarding the use of it. Again, concurrence or a vote of the committee would ensure that the issues are fully aired so that our members and the public can fully understand what the committee is doing." Mr. Waxman, in response, agreed. He said, "Subpoena authority, whether for documents or witnesses for a hearing or deposition, is a significant power that should be exercised with restraint." He noted that over 1,000 subpoenas were issued unilaterally by then-Chairman Burton during the Clinton administration, and the committee was widely criticized for failing to handle its powers in the right way. He said, "I believe then, and I continue to believe now, that in issuing subpoenas for witnesses or documents, the right practice is for the chairman to consult with the ranking minority member before acting, and the right goal is to seek bipartisanship and let the committee decide disagreements when they arise." It is in that spirit I offer this amendment. It's an opportunity for us to start off on the right foot, to make a break from the abuses of the last 4 years when 100 subpoenas were issued unilaterally despite a promise at this very organizational meeting 4 years ago that that would not be the practice. And so I commend my amendment to my colleagues, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I'd now like to strike the last word on this amendment and recognize myself as such. The authority of the chairman to issue a subpoena is a very important one. As I mentioned in my opening statement, it's not something that I take lightly. I have a great deal of respect for the authority delegated to me to issue a subpoena under the House rules, and I do not plan to issue a subpoena that is unnecessary or unjustified. I've also made it clear that I plan to inform Mr. Cummings about every subpoena sent from this committee. I also intend to have open communication with the ranking member about the reason and necessity for committee subpoenas. That said, I cannot agree to the process proposed by this amendment. Often the process of an agency producing documents to this committee can be very protracted. Issuing a subpoena is often the last resort to try to compel somebody to provide the documents that we would have hoped would have been offered otherwise. If an agency has delayed or refused to produce documents to our committee, a subpoena should be issued without further delays. They don't all necessarily go to the administration as well. There are others who have ignored the desire of this committee to obtain documents to get to the truth of a matter. I would urge members of this committee to vote against this amendment. I appreciate the spirit in which it's offered, but given the rules of the House, the precedent of the House, I would again urge my committee members to vote no on this amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word. Mr. Chairman,
recognize the gentleman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to weigh in and support this amendment, Mr. Chairman. Subpoena authority carries with it an enormous responsibility. It's in everybody's best interest, including the chairman's, to issue subpoenas with the support of either the ranking member or the whole committee through an open process. If the chairman and the ranking member cannot come to an agreement, then the entire committee should have the opportunity to vote on it. Because when the chairman issues a subpoena, it's not a subpoena from the chairman, it's a subpoena from the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And it should have the backing of the entire committee. When a chairman issues subpoenas unilaterally, without transparency and debate, the chances that the subpoena power will be abused increase. We've seen that in the past. When subpoena power is abused, it undermines the authority and the credibility of this committee, and it impedes this committee's important work. In contrast, when subpoenas are issued with the concurrence of the ranking member or through a majority vote of the committee, it lends credibility to our investigations and protects against abuses. When the committee votes, members and through them, the public they represent are given an opportunity to participate in the democratic process. Through our oversight, we carry out the business of the American people, and it's in everyone's interest that we operate in an open and transparent and responsible way. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Does any other member wish to comment on this?
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully you were
Mr.
recognized.
Clay, go ahead.
Thank you. And I move to strike the last where I want to speak in favor of my friend from Virginia's amendment. You know, traditionally, chairmen of this committee have declined to use unilateral subpoena authority and instead sought minority concurrence or a committee vote. Chairman Burton was the first to move away from this traditional model when he unilaterally issued, as the ranking member said, more than 1,000 subpoenas, and his actions were roundly criticized. When Republican Chairman Tom Davis replaced Chairman Burton, he corrected these abuses. Chairman Davis sought the minority's concurrence or called for a committee vote before issuing subpoenas. And when Chairman Waxman took the helm, he continued Chairman Davis's model. However, when Chairman Issa took leadership of this committee 4 years ago, he went back to the Burton model, and Chairman Issa issued over 100 unilateral subpoenas without ever holding a debate or a vote. And as a result of Chairman Issa's abusive practices, the credibility of this committee once again suffered. And let me remind all members on this committee that the American people do not want partisan battles, especially on this committee. We have a responsibility to them to protect their tax dollars, to exercise our oversight authority from this committee. And I think this is one committee that should be the least partisan of all in the House. Because if we are for the same objective, which is to protect the taxpayers' dollars, then we should operate in a fashion that's more nonpartisan than partisan. And today, as we begin a new Congress, we have yet another opportunity for a course correction through this amendment from the gentleman from Virginia. But instead of a correction, it seems to me that the Republican leadership is doubling down on the ISA model. They are doubling down not just in this committee, but throughout the House. And they are expecting, they are exporting the ISA model to other committees with a history of effective bipartisan work. They are ISA-tizing the House, and it's exactly the wrong decision based on the abuses we have witnessed firsthand in this committee over the last 4 years. So, Mr. Chairman, I urge the adoption of the amendment. And by the way, Mr. Issa is a friend of mine, but the model's incorrect, and I'll yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Delegate from District of Columbia, Ms. Norton is recognized.
Mr. Clay, I'm sure Mr. Issa appreciates your friendship. But Mr. Chairman, I'd like to indicate why I support this amendment. You have to ask yourself, why would committee chairs in the past have essentially complied with this, with what essentially this amendment would ask? Why would they allow a committee vote after concurrence with the ranking member was not achieved? I'd like to suggest that the reason, Mr. Chairman, is that it protects the chairman. I don't think chairman did it entirely out of largesse. The ranking member disagrees. At least the chairman can say, not on his own say-so, but going to the full committee, I got the vote, the majority vote of the full committee. In that case, surely that is not only a much more transparent result, but it will appear to the general public to be a fair result. Whereas simply leaving the matter that the ranking member disagrees with the chairman makes it look like two men had a disagreement, and that is how the matter was resolved. So I would think that the chairman would want the matter resolved with a vote that I would imagine he would win. But he might not. There are occasions when officials have been subpoenaed, even though they were willing to come on their own. But in the usual course, I think that the chairman would prevail, given the differences in the numbers of Democrats and Republicans. So to the general public, it looks like the chairman had the vote. Without that, it looks like he did the subpoena and one man agreed with him himself, and the other man disagreed with him, the minority, and the public won't know what to think, except perhaps there was some unfairness in issuing the subpoena. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentlewoman. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cummings.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be very brief. I wholeheartedly support the gentleman's amendment. As I was sitting here, I couldn't help but think about a song, Mr. Chairman, that was around, I guess, when I was in college. It was entitled "Slipping into Darkness." And, I'm noticing a pattern. And there's a pattern that is dangerous to our democracy. One of the things that I tell my children is that I want to go out there and fight every day to make sure that they inherit a democracy better than the one that was around when I came on earth. And I'm seeing patterns. And for example, here in this situation, we had a situation where we had the ultimate of abuse in this committee. Republicans and Democrats were ashamed of the way that subpoenas were issued. I heard from them, I got note from them. I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats. And when I talk about slipping into darkness, what I'm saying is that we can chip away at rules, and the next thing you know, we won't even know what we used to have. We've been chipping away at people's right to vote, for example, where 600,000 people in Texas, according to Justice Ginsburg, couldn't vote the last time. We chip. And the next thing you know, you don't even know what it used to be, because everything gets baked in the cake. And, Mr. Chairman, I know that you all are going to win this vote, but this is bigger than us. It is. Mr. Chairman was just saying to me that, he wanted to try to resolve this issue as fast as he could. And I told him that this means a lot to us because we don't want to slip into darkness. And we want to make sure that we protect certain rights. Now, the subpoena power is a powerful power. To the new members, people who are subpoenaed here many times have to go out and get a lawyer. And they come here and half of them are scared to death. And we have seen situations where that power has been abused. People that didn't really need to come before this committee were subpoenaed. And with a little bit of consultation, concurrence, we could have avoided certain things. There were other subpoenas where by talking to the ranking member, we were able to talk to the powers that be to get them to provide the documents or whatever was required without the subpoena. So when you don't have those avenues open for concurrence and to discussion and whatever, it really does create a problem. Now, Mr. Chairman, I believe you that your actions will speak very, very loud, and I'm sure that they will say the right things. But I just want to tell the committee, we're going down this road, and the question is, where does the road end? And with that, again, I support the gentleman's amendment. I think it's timely. I think it would send a powerful message to Speaker Boehner and others who are spreading this ISA mode throughout the Congress, and would say that we want to go in another direction so that we don't just slip into darkness. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Any other member wish to? Gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
Before yielding to the chairman, let me just say the ranking member said slipping into darkness, chipping away at democracy. I just would remind people that 22 times the President of the United States said he couldn't do something, and then last November did in fact that very thing. If we want to talk about chipping away at democracy, slipping into darkness, how about the fact that liberal Democrat law professor Jonathan Turley himself said the president should not be able to do what he did? We're talking about continuing a simple practice of the chairman being able to issue subpoenas. If we want to use this language of slipping into darkness, chipping away at democracy, let's focus that language where it belongs. What the president has done after 22 times saying he couldn't do that very thing. So you can use the big fancy language, but let's put it where it's appropriate. With that, I would yield balance of my time to the chairman of the full committee.
I thank the gentleman. One of the things that I would hope would happen is that we don't have to issue subpoenas. That is a last resort. The goal and intention here is to allow Congress to do its job. But we've all sat here. We've all sat here, and obviously excluding the freshmen here, we've all sat here and have issued letters time and time and time again to the administration only to have them ignored and not responded to. And there are issues outside of the administration where some people need subpoenas in order to help give them the air cover that they need in order to give a full and complete accounting to the Congress. I would also remind the body that there are times when this body is not in session that we do need to issue subpoenas. But I would also hope that we would get support on both sides of the aisle that when we do issue a letter, and that it's taken in the serious light that it is, and that there be a good response, and therefore never a need for a subpoena. And again, I would urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. I appreciate the spirit in which it's offered. We're continuing a practice that is consistent under the House rules, that has been part of this committee's history, and I just urge no on this amendment and yield back to the gentleman from Ohio. Does he yield back? He yields back. The gentleman from New York, Ms. Maloney.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I am speaking strongly and passionately in support of this amendment, which would require that before you issue a subpoena, that the concurrence of the ranking member be achieved or allow the committee to vote on the subpoena. And if you talk about the tradition, this was the tradition of the committee until Chairman Burton came and issued 1,000 unilateral subpoenas. Now, the subpoena power is a huge power. At the very least, you should ask a person whether or not they will testify before you issue a subpoena, because it's very damaging on their reputations. And I want to commend one of the most outstanding chairmen of this committee since I've been in Congress, and he was a Republican, and that was Chairman Davis. And when he got the gavel, he returned to the fair process, the civil process that this amendment displays. We're talking about talking to each other and working it out, which is what we all want to do. But to have unilateral subpoena power, that I do not believe that this chairman will abuse it, but it could be abused. And I want to cite one example. When, was it Mr. Koskin? That was Mr. Koskinen. He's a commissioner at the IRS, and he was issued a subpoena before he was even asked to testify. He, of course, said, I will testify. And I think that there is a challenge to all of us that we need our government to be civil and respectful to individuals. Otherwise, people won't want to go into government. They'll say, look how they treat people. They drag them in and announce that they're subpoenaed, implying that they're not cooperating, hurting someone's reputation. And I think when we abuse these situations, we turn people off of government. We want good people to come into government, to bring their expertise. Good people have many options. They can go to many different fields. They don't have to come to government. But people won't want to participate in government when they see the way we abuse this subpoena power and other powers to discredit them. I think it's a huge problem on many levels. And I would implore that my colleagues go back to the example of Chairman Davis, who followed the procedure that Mr. Connolly is putting forward, which is reasonable. Some consultation, a decision where it's openly discussed, and a vote on the very important and powerful tool of subpoena. And I feel that we are hurting not only the process of this committee, but the process of our government when we send signals that allow us to issue subpoenas, not even talk to people, send out press releases, smear them. People say, I don't want to be treated that way. I don't want to serve in government. So I think this is a very important vote. I congratulate the new chairman. I hope that he will live up to his really fine rhetoric that we're going to work together. But one way to ensure that we work together is to accept this very modest, reasonable amendment that merely says you have a vote and you have a consultation, which was historically the process in this important committee.
Would the gentlelady yield for a question?
I most certainly will yield.
I thank my friend from New York. Is it not true that under the worst case scenario, if this amendment becomes part of the rules package, we would have a vote because of an objection from the ranking member? And is it not further true that it's quite clear the majority would carry the vote and a subpoena would be issued?
That's quite clear. The majority has the votes. They're going to win every vote in this committee because they have the votes.
I thank my colleague.
So it's an important point that you raised, and I yield back.
Would the gentlewoman yield for a question?
Yes, most certainly will.
If indeed that there are the votes, and if indeed this is just all academic, then why insist on this particular amendment? If it's not to slow down the process.
Well, we are the Congress of the United States of America. And who was it, William Burke, who said that there is no issue that is so controversial that it cannot be debated. And what this does, it cuts off the debate. It cuts off the discussion. And I think that that is absolutely wrong. I do not believe that this chairman would do it. I think it's extremely unfair to individuals that are serving in government to get subpoenaed, or anywhere, serving anywhere in our country, to get subpoenaed without first being asked to testify. I think that's unfair to their character. It can smear their character. But the power to debate is a very valuable one, and we should honor it. Is there an issue that is so controversial it can't be debated?
The gentlewoman's time has expired. Thank you.
I was just
Any other member
started.
wish to be? the gentleman from Massachusetts. And let me say, as we recognize Mr. Lynch, that certainly our hearts and prayers are with the people of Massachusetts. You're going through quite a storm there, and hope and pray that the people of Massachusetts, and your district in particular, are safe and sound in this horrendous, unbelievable storm. So,
well, thank you. I'm sure my wife is saving all that shoveling for me when I get home later on this week. So, but first of all, Mr. Chairman, before we lose this all, I do want to congratulate you on taking over the committee, and I want to thank you for your courtesy here and allowing us to discuss this. I want to congratulate the other subcommittee chairman and the ranking members on this side as well, and our new members. I did have a chance to look at the roster, and there are indeed 25 Republicans and only 18 Democrats. So when we talk about putting this to a vote, the Republicans have the votes. There's just no question about it. So that's what makes Mr. Connolly's amendment so reasonable and so modest, because, you know, even after a failure to gain concurrence with the ranking member, the question will be put on these subpoenas, and in every case, 25 beats 18, and the subpoena will issue. But we do have a history here, and all we need to do is look back to this last session when the former chairman, Mr. Issa, issued a subpoena to the Secretary of State, John Kerry, without having first asked him to appear voluntarily. It happened to be the same day that Speaker Boehner removed jurisdiction on the Benghazi issue and created a select committee to deal with that issue. So we've seen, and I honestly have to say that the reason that Mr. Kerry was subpoenaed was to embarrass him. It was to embarrass him, because he would have come voluntarily, but that was simply not good enough. So we've seen subpoenas used here for punitive and you know, political purposes, and that's what we're trying to guard against. After that fact, you know, I also think that we are a deliberative body, Congress. It is in our nature. That is our purpose here under the constitutional framework, is to talk about issues. That provides clarity. It provides transparency. We derive our power from the people that we represent. And so I honestly believe by putting it to a vote, even though we're going to lose, I think to induce that debate, to have that discussion, to have that transparency, and to have that vote actually gives credibility at the end of the day to that subpoena. And I think without that, it may be fairly argued, if it's just going to be one person deciding that a subpoena shall issue and cause a United States citizen to have to appear before this committee to be questioned, I think we're building in perhaps a reversible error by not having a full debate, by not having a discussion, by not having a vote of the members of this committee. I think that it is making those subpoenas, when issued, less forceful and probably subject to some criticism and some challenge in court. So it may indeed cause some delay in achieving the ends for which those subpoenas were directed. And for those reasons, I just think—
Would the gentleman yield?
I sure will.
Because I want to reiterate what the gentleman is saying, and I think it goes to what the gentleman from North Carolina asked. You know, you're going to lose anyway, so what is all this talk about? After the history we have discussed, the real talk is about the appearance of fairness. We're going to lose. There's ways to lose. You can't go out and say, well, we lost and isn't that terrible if there's been a vote. But you can sure go out and say, isn't that terrible if there's not been a vote, but there's been a difference between the ranking member and the chairman, and no vote has taken place. So it isn't a question of losing because everyone here is aware of that. The question is to correct the history of the appearance of unfairness in this committee. And one way to correct it is to, at least when you're going to lose anyway, as the gentleman says, allow a vote so that there can be no protest. In a democracy, when you lose by a fair vote, that's fair. When you have only the words of the chair and the ranking member without a vote, that's when the issue of unfairness arises, and I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Will the gentleman yield?
I only have 11 seconds left, so I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? Recognize the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Lawrence.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here on this committee as a freshman. And I came into Congress with the platform of working together. This amendment that we're proposing today is working to codify the practice that a respected member of this Congress, Republican Tom Davis, used. I came into Congress and campaigning in a district that had strong Republican voices and strong Democratic voices. And collectively, what I heard was that we need to understand that it's about the people. It's not about your party. It's about doing what's best and making sure that when I send you to Congress, that you are engaged and part of the process. I wanted to quote what Chairman Tom Davis said, and I quote, "I have that authority. I think I will always consult with you regarding the use of it. Again, concurrence or a vote of the committee would ensure that the issues are fully aired so that our members and the public can fully understand what the committee is doing. And I think in some cases, after discussion, we might want to have that option." I'm honored to serve, Mr. Chairman, and the ranking member's leadership here as a freshman. But I'm also here as an equal, as being sent to the people's house by the vote of the people. And I think it's important that that clear, honest, and discussion that's required for us to debate, to have it to be clear to the public what the issues are, and to ensure that this is not a one-sided agenda, but it is presented and there is always a vote. And the people sent majority Republican to this Congress, and I respect that. But we have a job to do, especially on this committee, where we are given the responsibility of oversight. And that power of issuing a subpoena should be one that is respected, one that is deliberate, and one that the public and this, as a committee member, we all understand. And I ask today that the amendment that's being presented, in my view, would restore a respected Republican, and I say that as a Democrat, a freshman Democrat, will restore this model so that we can get back to the public having that sense of respect for what we do, because we know this country was founded on the debate, the rub, and the serious difference of philosophies that created an amazing constitution and country. And on this committee, we have the responsibility of ensuring that this government continues to function. And we have some work to do, committee members, to gain back that trust of the people of this country. Thank you.
Would the gentlelady yield?
Yes, I will yield.
I wonder, is it your expectation, given the given the sort of broad criteria the new chairman has set, that actually the concurrence of the ranking member would be more often than not, and the need for a vote in the event of the rare time he would object, assuming the chairman keeps his commitment, would be a rare event here in the committee, not a common event. So we're not talking about voting on every subpoena. We're talking about voting on those subpoenas to which the ranking member might take objection as not being fair and necessary or not being transparent. Is that the gentlelady's understanding of the amendment?
Would you please repeat that? I'm a freshman.
The point being, I didn't mean to put the gentlelady on the spot. The point being that the chairman has given us reassuring words about how he would use the power of a subpoena.
Yes.
And in light of that, the implied criteria being fair and necessary, the assumption is then the ranking member would more often than not give his concurrence. And there's nothing to be afraid of in this amendment. It is a contingency amendment in the rare event, because based on the chairman's understanding, it would be a rare event, unlike our previous chairman, that the ranking member might object. We are preserving as a contingency the right to ask for a vote. A vote we know we might lose. But
that is my understanding. That is my understanding.
I thank the gentlewoman as she yields back here, and I appreciate your participation in this committee. We welcome you to the committee and look forward to your ongoing participation.
Thank you.
Is there any other member wish to be heard on this amendment? The new gentlewoman who's joining us here, Ms. Watson Coleman from New Jersey, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for recognizing me, and to Mr. Connolly, thank you for advancing this amendment that we're now considering. You, as a sort of veteran campaigner, but certainly new to this environment, I know that I've got the sentiment of the people in the state of New Jersey in particular, and they want us to, can't just everybody just get along. Can't we get along? Can't we collaborate? Can't we share information? And can't we move forward on behalf of this great country and the citizens that are there? I'm so delighted to be a part of this committee. I think it's an important committee. And I think that the discussion that we're having, just even about something that someone has suggested will happen rarely, sets a tone here. Because if it's only going to happen rarely, and if it's even going to happen even more rarely, that our ranking member would not concur with the chairman's decision to issue a subpoena, then I don't understand the harm in advancing this very worthwhile amendment. It isn't going to delay anything, and in fact, it communicates to the citizens of this country that this is a new Congress, that the 114th Congress and this committee, this Oversight Committee, is willing to collaborate, to work together, and to ensure that we are both doing that which is necessary for the people that have elected us. I think it's important that we keep hearing about two very effective chairmen, one Democrat, one Republican, Mr. Waxman and Mr. Davis, both acknowledging that they had unilateral authority to issue subpoenas, but recognized in the interest of getting the work done, effectiveness, efficiency, fairness, and dignity, that they would indeed secure the will of either the ranking member or the majority. I know what it is to be in the majority, and I know what it is to be in the minority. And at the end of the day, the majority will be done. But we will be doing that in a more transparent way if we have the opportunity to bring it forth and discuss it and have it considered. And I think that that's what people are looking for. That's what we can hope to achieve here by agreeing to this amendment. And that is what I think will set a tone for this particular committee, that we're going to work together, that we're going to find those things that we can work together on, and we're going to do it in an open and transparent way. We hear the notion of transparency a lot, but at the end of the day, as my mama used to tell me, your actions speak louder than your words, Bonnie. So I associate myself with all those who have certainly advanced the support of this amendment. I thank my colleague for advancing this amendment, and I ask all of my colleagues to find it in their hearts and in their vote to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlewoman yields back. I thank you again, and welcome to the committee. We appreciate it. Look forward to your participation, and welcome. Is there any other further discussion on the amendment? If not, the question is now on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would ask for a recorded vote.
As previously announced, further proceedings on the question will be postponed. Are there further amendments?
Chairman?
Yes.
I have a colloquy.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a couple additional items about the rules I would like to clarify. 2 weeks ago, we proposed that the committee adopt a document protocol, which is something the House parliamentarian strongly recommended. We suggested that the document protocol include procedures for obtaining documents, handling classified and non-classified documents with proprietary, privileged, trade secret, confidential, or sensitive information, accessing documents, and releasing documents or their information. When you and I met yesterday, you stated that we did not need a change to the rules to accomplish this, and that our staffs could begin working on this as early as this week. I just want to confirm that for the record. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, as you noted, we have discussed this. We have talked about it. I highlighted the rules of the House. I fully intend to comply with the rules of the House. And our staffs will work together with the goal to get to a document flow that we will both understand. And I know that our staffs, I believe, are meeting Thursday morning.
We did not set a formal deadline for completing this yesterday, but can we agree to have our staff report back to us at a date certain? I defer to you as to how long we should give them, a month maybe?
I will, let's see the progress, and I'm happy to revisit this with you. I think the intention is right, the goal is right. They are making progress, and let's see how they progress. I would like to have it so that we're all on the same page. The House rules on page 555 are very clear. Such records shall be the property of the House, and each member, delegate, and resident commissioner shall have access thereto. It is clear, and we will work together to come to a mutual agreement here.
Mr. Chairman, we also discussed how to handle whistleblowers and the information they provide to the committee. I hope we can reach a mutual understanding of what our rules require on that as part of this process. Finally, Mr. Chairman, you and I met last December, and we had a very good meeting. We agreed on quite a lot, and I just want to confirm one point here today because it's critical. Essentially, we agreed that we would not go after each other's staff. After our meeting, I sent you a letter memorializing our agreement, and I would like to read very briefly from it, and I quote, "I am also thankful that you agreed to return to our committee's long-standing practice of respecting our hardworking professional staff members on both sides of the aisle and keeping them out of the public fray. They are not elected officials, and they do not deserve to be thrust into the public spotlight for partisan political purposes. I am pleased that we both agreed to come to each other first to seek answers to any potential questions about our staff rather than making allegations in the press or raising questions in witness interviews or public hearings. I would like to discuss with you in more detail how best to communicate this approach to all of our staff members," end of quote. Mr. Chairman, I know you already agreed to this in December, but I want every staff member in this room and those beyond this room that work for us that know that this is our joint position. I believe that we have the best staff in the Congress, House or Senate. They work extremely hard, weekends, long nights, and they deserve to know that they will not be attacked for the work they do for this committee. Mr. Chairman, can you please confirm that for the record?
Well, and I appreciate the ranking member's that passion and concern for this. I, too, share a deep concern that, again, as I said at the beginning, the admonition that John Boehner gave to me, you can disagree, but don't be disagreeable. To me, that also means that we have the greatest respect for the individuals who serve and work As staff on this committee, they work hard, they work long, they're patriotic, they're passionate about the issues. We're supposed to debate these issues. I do not want them to become the subject for fodder or other sorts of discussion. I think that is out of bounds. I want my staff, I want the ranking member staff, I want everybody to understand that as members discuss issues, let's keep them on the topics and issues, and the personalities and the staff should not be subject. Now, if there are issues of integrity, if there are issues of people stepping out of bounds, we will address those, and we will address those in the right and proper manner. But as a general rule and practice, it is not good form, it is not acceptable to be highlighting a particular staff person. I signed up as the chairman of this committee, and members are good punching bags, fair game. But to the extent that we can keep it on the issues and keep it away from the staff, I wholeheartedly agree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing no other amendments, it is now time for the committee will vote on those amendments for which a roll call vote was requested. The one vote was the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley's amendment. So the vote will occur on the amendment according to the committee rules, and the clerk will now call the roll.
Mr. Chaffetz?
No.
Mr. Chaffetz votes no. Mr. Micah? No. Mr. Micah votes no. Mr. Turner? Mr. Duncan? Mr. Duncan votes no. Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Wahlberg? Mr. Amash? Mr. Amash votes no. Mr. Gosar? No. Mr. Gosar votes no. Mr. Desjardins? No. Mr. Desjardins votes no. Mr. Gowdy? No. Mr. Gowdy votes no. Mr. Farenthold? Mrs. Lummis? No. Mrs. Lummis votes no. Mr. Massey? No. Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Meadows? No. Mr. Meadows votes no. Mr. DeSantis? Mr. DeSantis votes no. Mr. Mulvaney? Mr. Mulvaney votes no. Mr. Buck? No. Mr. Buck votes no. Mr. Walker? No. Mr. Walker votes no. Mr. Blum? No. Mr. Blum votes no. Mr. Heiss? No. Mr. Heiss votes no. Mr. Russell? No. Mr. Russell votes no. Mr. Carter? No. Mr. Carter votes no. Mr. Grothman? No. Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Hurd? No. Mr. Hurd votes no. Mr. Palmer? Mr. Palmer votes no. Mr. Cummings? Yes. Mr. Cummings votes aye. Mrs. Maloney? Aye. Mrs. Maloney votes aye. Ms. Norton? Aye. Ms. Norton votes aye. Mr. Clay? Aye. Mr. Clay votes aye. Mr. Lynch? Aye. Mr. Lynch votes aye. Mr. Cooper? Aye. Mr. Cooper votes aye. Mr. Connolly? Aye. Mr. Connolly votes aye. Mr. Cartwright? Aye. Mr. Cartwright votes aye. Ms. Duckworth? Ms. Kelly? Ms. Kelly votes aye. Ms. Lawrence? Ms. Lawrence votes aye. Mr. Liu? Mrs. Watson-Coleman? Mrs. Watson-Coleman votes aye. Ms. Plaskett? Aye. Ms. Plaskett votes aye. Mr. Desaulniers? Aye. Mr. Desaulniers votes aye. Mr. Boyle?
Aye.
Mr. Boyle votes aye.
Will the gentleman from Michigan, how is Mr. Wahlberg recorded?
Mr. Wahlberg is not recorded.
Mr. Wahlberg?
No. Mr. Wahlberg votes no.
Has any other member, has every member been recorded at this point? The clerk will report the tally.
On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 23 noes.
The amendment is not adopted. If there's no further discussion, I move that the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform approve the resolution adopting the rules of the committee. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
No. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The motion is adopted. We will have a roll call vote on this. Clerk will take the roll.
Mr. Chaffetz.
Aye.
Mr. Chaffetz votes aye. Mr. Micah.
Aye.
Mr. Micah votes aye. Mr. Turner. Mr. Duncan. Mr. Duncan votes aye. Mr. Jordan. Yes. Mr. Jordan votes aye. Mr. Wahlberg. Aye. Mr. Wahlberg votes aye. Mr. Amash. Yes. Mr. Amash votes aye. Mr. Gosar. Mr. Gosar votes aye. Mr. Desjarlais. Mr. Desjarlais votes aye. Mr. Gowdy. Yes. Mr. Gowdy votes aye. Mr. Farenthold. Mrs. Lummis. Mrs. Lummis votes aye. Mr. Massey. Aye. Mr. Massey votes aye. Mr. Meadows. Aye. Mr. Meadows votes aye. Mr. DeSantis. Aye. Mr. DeSantis votes aye. Mr. Mulvaney. Aye. Mr. Mulvaney votes aye. Mr. Buck. Aye. Mr. Buck votes aye. Mr. Walker. Aye. Mr. Walker votes aye. Mr. Blum. Aye. Mr. Blum votes aye. Mr. Heiss. Aye. Mr. Heiss votes aye. Mr. Russell. Aye. Mr. Russell votes aye. Mr. Carter. Aye. Mr. Carter votes aye. Mr. Grothman. Aye. Mr. Grothman votes aye. Mr. Hurd. Aye. Mr. Hurd votes aye. Mr. Palmer. Aye. Mr. Palmer votes aye. Mr. Cummings. Mr. Cummings votes no. Mrs. Maloney. No. Mrs. Maloney votes no. Ms. Norton. Ms. Norton votes no. Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay votes no. Mr. Lynch. Mr. Lynch votes no. Mr. Cooper.
No.
Mr. Cooper votes no. Mr. Connolly.
No.
Mr. Connolly votes no. Mr. Cartwright.
No.
Mr. Cartwright votes no. Ms. Duckworth. Ms. Kelly. Ms. Kelly votes no. Ms. Lawrence. Ms. Lawrence votes no. Mr. Liu. Mrs. Watson-Coleman. Mrs. Watson-Coleman votes no. Ms. Plaskett. Ms. Plaskett votes no. Mr. Desaigner. Mr. Desaigner votes no. Mr. Boyle. Mr. Boyle votes no.
Have all members been recorded? Clerk will report the tally.
On this vote, there are 23 ayes and 14 nays.
The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed to. The resolution adopting the rules of the committee is approved. We're now going to move to a portion relating to the subcommittee assignments. The revised subcommittee assignments are in your folders and will be placed into the record. I'd now like to introduce the subcommittee chairman. This Congress, the committee will have 6 subcommittees with the following jurisdictions. By the way, we'll do this, then we're going to do the photo, then we will move into the markup of the 2 bills. So hang tight with us yet, and we have Blake Farenthold on the floor, so don't, I know you don't want to miss that, but hang tight with me.
Just in case he asks me to read it.
This Congress will have 6 subcommittees with the following jurisdictions. The Subcommittee on Government Operations will have all of our legislative jurisdiction as well as some important aspects of oversight as relating to procurement, Federal Civil Service, the U.S. Postal Service, and the District of Columbia. The subcommittee will be chaired by Mr. Mark Meadows of North Carolina. The Subcommittee on National Security will have oversight jurisdiction on national security, homeland security, foreign operations, immigration, defense, and criminal justice. That subcommittee will be chaired by Mr. Ron DeSantis of Florida. The Subcommittee on Healthcare Benefits and Administrative Rules will have oversight jurisdiction on healthcare policy, regulatory affairs, government-wide rules and regulations, and the administration and solvency of benefit and entitlement programs. The subcommittee will be chaired by Mr. Jim Jordan of Ohio. The Subcommittee on Interior will have oversight jurisdiction of the Department of Energy, the Department of Agriculture, Public Lands, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Interior. The subcommittee will be chaired by Ms. Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming. The Subcommittee on Information Technology will have oversight jurisdiction on information security management, cybersecurity, emerging technologies, and privacy. The subcommittee will be chaired by Mr. Will Hurd of Texas. The Subcommittee on Transportation and Public Assets will have oversight jurisdiction of federal real property, the General Services Administration, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Transportation Security Administration, and the Department of Transportation. That subcommittee will be chaired by Mr. John Micah of Florida. the former full committee chairman for Transportation Infrastructure, the T&I Committee. We'll now turn some time to Mr. Cummings to introduce the subcommittee ranking members.
Chairman, I'm pleased to announce that 6 members of our caucus have agreed to serve as subcommittee ranking members on the Oversight Committee. They are Congressman Stephen Lynch on the Subcommittee on National Security. Ranking on the Subcommittee on Government Operations will be Congressman Jerry Connolly. Matthew Cartwright, Congressman Cartwright will rank on the Subcommittee on Healthcare Benefits and Administrative Rules. Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth will rank on the Subcommittee on Transportation and Public Assets. Congresswoman Robin Kelly will rank on the Subcommittee on Information Technology. And Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence will rank on the Subcommittee on the Interior. I want to thank those members for agreeing to serve, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. I thank the men and women who will be serving in these positions. This ends the committee organization portion of our meeting today.